Hello everybody and welcome to my second video covering Green Man Gaming's Black Friday sale. I did an original video that went over a lot of the big sales going on games like Borderlands 3 or The Outer Worlds, but I promised a second follow-up video on a bunch of smaller things that are easily overlooked or are like hidden gems. I should probably say that my definition of hidden gems are things that are often overlooked or games that are at a massive discount that you may not have considered picking up because maybe they're an older title or maybe they are just not as well known. So we're going to go over a bunch of really great games today, and it's going to be definitely a lightning round as far as one of these sale videos is concerned. With that said, I am a Green Man Gaming affiliate. If you use the affiliate link that I put in the description or in the comments, I do get a little bit of money back from each sale for people using that link. And you don't have to do anything other than use the link and you support the channel. So please consider doing that. Without further ado, let's jump right in. And like I said previously, this is going to be a lightning round. There's a lot of games to get through and not a lot of time, so I may not spend as much time on these games individually as I might normally, but at the end of the day, a lot of these are super cheap and they're worth just grabbing and picking up for the most part. Some of them are well-known titles, some of them aren't, but it's just all really nice sales on games that should keep you interested and should provide a pretty wide range of interests. You know, it's not going to be like all shooters, for example. So the first game that I'm suggesting is The Flame in the Flood, which is this really cool crafting survival game where you're basically in a boat going down a river, and you could choose to stop at little locations, and they are procedurally generated, so little events will happen, and you'll get a really cool little story as you progress through the game. Think of a game kind of like Don't Starve, except, like I said, you're in a boat going down a river. It's really cool, it looks beautiful, and for that price, it's absolutely worth giving it a try. My second game is Next Up Hero, which is this really cool action roguelite game, which is basically a mix between Hades and a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, that's the best way that I can put it. You choose a character you play through, and when you die, you leave your character's like ghost behind. And as you're playing through the game, you will find other people's ghosts, and you can resurrect them. You can have them join like a little army of yours when you're playing through. So you'll find other people where they die, and you can get them to become part of your team, and you go through and continue to play until you die, and then you leave behind a ghost for other people to find. So that's kind of the gist of how it works. It can also be played in co-op, and like I said, it's like Hades meets a Saturday morning cartoon. If that sounds like a lot of fun to you, then this game is for you. Next up is an oldie but a goodie, which is Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy. It is made by David Cage, and if you are familiar with his work such as Beyond Two Souls or Detroit Become Human or Heavy Rain, you know that you're getting into an interesting, weird narrative experience. And this game is the definition of a David Cage game, in my opinion. It gets really weird at the end. It starts kind of normal, like there's this murder mystery going on and it's cool, but then there's like superpower things. It's really, really weird, but really, really cool. And especially for just over $1, like absolutely worth playing through the remastered version of this game. I enjoy it quite a lot. Next up is my favorite game of all time, which is Life is Strange. The first one, not the second one. I'll get into that in a minute. But Life is Strange is a fantastic narrative experience that tells its story really, really well. And if you're the kind of person who has either played through the first episode because it's free on Steam, or has seen other people play through and you kind of got disinterested after just the first episode of the game, then I urge you to continue playing because it is not what it seems. By the end of the game, you'll know what I mean. It gets really crazy right at the end of episode 3 into 4, and then 5 is just bonkers. It's incredible. It's one of the best narrative experiences that you can get in any game, period, which again is why it is my favorite game of all time. That's not to be said about Life is Strange 2. I am very lukewarm on Life is Strange 2. I think it's okay. It's not bad, but it's not anything close to the first game. So if you're interested in picking one of the other ones up, they're all on sale. My other suggestion would be, of course, Beyond the Storm, or Before the Storm, which I think is really good. It's a prequel to the first Life is Strange, and it's totally worth playing through. It's a little bit shorter, but is definitely really, really solid. With that said, you have a very limited time on this deal in particular if you want to get it cheaper than getting it from Steam at the moment. So act fast with this one, but absolutely would recommend it. Suffer through that first episode if you're not interested in the story, and you'll kind of see what I mean once it gets to the end of episode 2 and then 3 and then so forth. You'll get caught in by then. For a complete change of pace, and as a game that I meant to get in my first video, but I somehow overlooked it, which is Resident Evil 2. This game is a remake of the original Resident Evil 2, which was easily one of the best Resident Evil games, period, until lately when this game got remade and is just far and away the better version of the two games. It's fantastic, it's updated, but it still keeps the spirit and everything alive from the first Resident Evil 2, which is a weird sentence to say. And for this freaking price, for 75% off, it is phenomenal, especially because it just came out. But if you have already played Resident Evil 2 or you're not interested in it, but you still kind of want something like that, you haven't played Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 7 is also on sale for a pretty hefty discount. So pick that one up, because that one is also fan-freaking-tastic. Not anything like Resident Evil 2, because Resident Evil 2 is like a third-person, over-the-shoulder type. You get the gist, right? With the weird camera angles and everything. But with Resident Evil 7, it is a first-person horror game. It is a change of theme in many ways for this series. You know, you don't necessarily have zombies walking around, but it is great. It will scare your pants off. Games. If you're looking for an MMO to play that isn't Warcraft or WoW Classic or Final Fantasy, then the Elder Scrolls Online Elsewhere is also on sale for a massive discount. It's the perfect time to jump in and start playing that. I think this was a pretty mediocre MMO when it launched, but every single expansion seems to be adding more and more to make it better and better, and this is no exception to that. People who play it love it, and maybe this is the time for you to jump into it. And speaking of games that have gotten better since launch, Fallout 76 is on a pretty massive discount. It's not substantial, but it's enough to consider picking it up. It's definitely different than it was at launch, and Bethesda hasn't done the best job of PR since then, but they still have done a good job making the game a lot better. And they also have that battle royale mode that is ridiculous that's in the game, and it's an option. But you know, if you're looking to jump into a Fallout universe, especially after playing something like The Outer Worlds, and you like that kind of game and you want something maybe a bit different, than Fallout 76 might be what you're looking for. And if you're a fan of strategy, I got a list of games for you here. So Interplanetary, the Enhanced Edition, is on a massive discount. It's cool. You basically build up your planet and fight other planets. And if that doesn't sound cool to you, then I don't know what would, because that is a really awesome concept for a game, and it plays out pretty well in this game, and especially at the price. But if you're interested in more traditional strategy games, then Age of Empires 2, the definitive edition, is like 20% off at the moment on Green Man Gaming, which brings it down to about $15. It's just a enhanced version of Empires 2, which I think was the better of the Age of Empire games, but it also has 4K Ultra HD compatibility, which means that the game actually looks a lot crisper than it really should. It doesn't need to look as crisp as it does in 4K, but it does enough, and it runs well enough that it's, you know, going to run on basically any modern system at 4K. So it's fun, it's cool. If you like Age of Empires, then it is also on sale. If you want a more modern game that is a strategy game, then Stellaris is also on sale, and so are most of its expansions and DLC stuff. Stellaris is a fantastic space strategy game that does a really good job of telling its story different each time you play different races, and you just go throughout the galaxy and you explore and you do things however you want to. It's not turn-based, right? It's not like you're playing Civ. It's not like a 4X game in that sense, but it does have a lot of the 4X stuff associated with it, even though it all happens in real time. You can pause and slow down and do that kind of stuff. So if you're the person who is intimidated by real-time stuff, then you don't really have to worry too much about it. But Stellaris is a fantastic example of a modern strategy game that does a lot of things right, and there's a lot of DLC to choose from in case you already own the base game. And if you're looking for a more chill strategy experience, City Skylines is on sale, which is a great little city builder. You know, think SimCity, but way better. There's a bunch of DLC that you can look through and peruse. A lot of it's on sale. A lot of it's pretty okay. Some of it's, you know, a little bit better than okay, but for the most part, you can just go to Steam and look at the workshop and get mods, because the mods are exceptional. You got these people who are putting a lot of time and effort into modding the game, and it just does absolutely make the game a whole lot better. My next suggestion is a fantastic deal alert for you. Prey is on sale for like dirt cheap. Prey is a really, really good psychological horror first-person shooter that does a really good job of kind of reliving the essence of what the System Shock games kind of were in many ways. I think that this iteration of Prey was solid, and they did a really good job with kind of giving you a modern experience within this like genre. But like I said, it's dirt cheap. It is totally worth picking up at the price that it's at. And if you haven't played Prey and you're looking to, then now's the time to get it. The same thing goes for Rage 2, by the way. That game like just came out this year, and it's already at a 70% discount. Like, that's a really big discount for a AAA game that came out this year and is still getting DLC and whatnot. It's a great little shooter. It's fast. It plays in many ways as smoothly as the new Doom, and that should be praise enough for it. There is things and weird little intricacies about the feel and the story and everything else that you may not like if you're not into first-person shooters, but for the most part, it's super solid. It plays well, and there's a bunch of really cool customization, and I think the world they did a lot better of making good compared to the first Rage. But because these two games released around the same time, I may as well also suggest the second one, which is Far Cry New Dawn, because they look a lot alike in many ways. They use a lot of the neon pinks and oranges and teals and stuff like that for their stylized look. But Far Cry New Dawn was the better of the modern Far Cry games that came out between Far Cry 5 and New Dawn. Like, New Dawn is the side expansion, I would call it, an optional expansion to Far Cry 5, even though it is its own full game. It is not as long as Far Cry 5 by any means, but it is a better game than Far Cry 5. They explored a lot with RPG mechanics within New Dawn that they didn't in Far Cry 5, and I think 5 was just not a very good story overall. It started out cool, but they didn't pay off on it in any way, in my opinion, where I think New Dawn did a way better job of giving you a better story and a better world to explore. And the gameplay is much better on top of that. So, you know, it's you pick and choose. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to play Prey or Rage or Far Cry New Dawn? In fact, you could even go pick up Far Cry 5. It's also on sale, but I don't really like it. Unfortunately, I do have to say this. Far Cry 5 does end on a bit of a cliffhanger, and Far Cry New Dawn picks up off of that cliffhanger. So unless you've played Far Cry 5, then there's going to be things in New Dawn that just don't make sense to you. So you either have to suffer through 5 and then play through New Dawn, or just ignore it and then suffer through not really knowing exactly what's going on within the game. But New Dawn is fantastic, and I would recommend it. Shifting gears, you have Grow Home, which is on a massive discount. It's like $2. You can go pick it up. It's a cool platformer that does the low poly style very, very well. It's pretty, really gorgeous. You know, the style of the game. I love this particular style, and the gameplay is really cool, and you can't go wrong for $2. It's, like I said, it's a cool little platformer. You may or may not enjoy it if you're into these kind of games. Like, if you played Unravel, maybe you would like this kind of game. If you enjoyed that, that's probably the best comparison I can make. They also released around the same window, so those games, you may have touched both of them, or maybe you skipped over one or the other, but Grow Home is fantastic, and I would recommend it. It is getting close to Christmas, and maybe you're someone who really enjoys the snow and sports that involve snow, like skiing and snowboarding, and maybe some more extreme sports. Well, then don't forget about Steep, because that is a game that does exist, and it is actually really good, even though it's not necessarily for everybody. I did say, right, that in my video, I will have a game that's possibly for everybody here. Well, Steep may be for that one section of people who really enjoy like the SSX kind of games, but haven't really gotten anything in that genre in a long time. Well, Steep is a good substitute for the time being. It's a lot of fun, it's cool, and some of the DLC is on sale too, in case you already own the game, so keep that in mind. If you want to hate your friends for the rest of your life, Overcooked 2 is on a pretty big discount. Again, this is another one of those games that I kind of missed in the first video, but skipped over it because I wanted to bring it up here since it's a little more, I mean, it's indie in many ways, but it's also not. It's kind of like one of those middle games that a lot of people know about, even though it's a smaller kind of game. Basically, you can play it solo or with friends. It's way better with friends, even though you will want to kill them. You're trying to cook up recipes and get the plates served. And that seems like a really simple thing, except you have time limits on these plates and you have a time limit on each level, and the levels change their themes and what's going on. And sometimes you'll have to cook things like sushi, but other times you'll have to cook things like burgers. And when the level is moving on you and there's different things happening, like maybe there's portals and whatnot, Overcooked 2 gets really chaotic really quick. And if you could play this one online with friends, but if you wanted to play it couch co-op, that is my recommended way of playing it, because then you can look into the whites of your friends' eyes as you yell at them and tell them that they don't know how to cook. Next up is a game that I regularly recommend, especially for people who are looking for overlooked games and don't necessarily stay up to date with a lot of the games that are being updated on a frequent basis, because No Man's Sky is a fantastic game that you must play. If you looked at this game when it launched and you looked at the bad reviews and everything, you're like, that's not for me, or maybe you played it and you're like, this definitely not for me, then I would urge you to think again and go and try it, because they have constantly been updating this game and it's been getting better and better and better, and it is legitimately at this point, with the newest update that just came out, the best version of these kinds of games. You know, if you're into like Minecraft and stuff like that, this is a better version. It's just hands down the best kind of crafting, even survival game out there, because there is a survival mode, like a hardcore mode. If you die, you're dead forever. If you want to play that way, or if you just want to cruise around the galaxy and do really cool stuff with space and building your own bases and having friends come and actually be a part of that. Yes, the game now has true multiplayer. Then this is a great, like legitimately one of the best experiences out there. It is really polished now compared to what it was when it first launched, and the game is hands down, like I said, one of the best experiences if you want to play a Minecraft-like game or any kind of crafting kind of like game. It also has its own little story involved in it, and like I said, it's got multiplayer now, so it's like you legitimately need to play this game. If you're not into those games, then ignore it. But if you tend to like those kind of games, then yeah, go play it. I'm not joking. It is really freaking good, and they are committed to constantly updating this sucker and making it better and better and better. And we see that over the years, because that is exactly what they have done. And if you like building your own spaceships and going and exploring galaxies, then Kerbal Space Program is a really good buy, especially at this price. It's a fantastic pickup. There is 2 expansions for the game. Both of them are really good. Well, one of them is really good. I think for the most part, the making history stuff is passable, but if you're really into this game, then yeah, pick it up. Otherwise, the Breaking Ground expansion is almost a must-have in many ways. Yeah, you basically are running your own space agency, and you can launch stuff and go land on moons and other planets, and the game does behave like you would expect in a sim, where you have to deal with how gravity works, for example, or trajectories, and how gravity works for moons versus other planets, and having atmosphere versus not. And you can't just like launch straight up in the atmosphere. You have to actually launch at an angle if you want to have the most efficient way of getting into orbit around the main planet, or any planet for that matter. So it's like, you're going to have to learn a little bit of science, but that's part of the fun. Is you're sitting there playing a cool little game, and you're learning actual physics and how space works. And I think that that is super cool. It's one of the biggest accomplishments for this game. In fact, people actually learn how space works through this game. There is a educational version of the game that some schools use, and that should speak volumes as to how much you may learn through this. If you're not into space or anything like that, then maybe if you're into building things, it might be good. Otherwise, avoid it. It may end up just proving stressful and frustrating. But if you're into like building your own stuff, maybe your own planes, and you're into space, then yeah, hands down, would recommend Kerbal Space Program. Lara Croft Go is a phenomenal little puzzle game. It is set within the Tomb Raider universe, obviously, because it's Lara Croft. And it's just this cool little puzzle game where you're moving around the little map, and it's low poly. It's really pretty to look at, and you can get it on your phone or things like that. You can play it mobile, or you can play it on PC for $2. It's really, really worth it. I enjoyed this game a lot. I think that the puzzles are well done, and it will make you think. And if you're into puzzle games like this, then it's absolutely worth picking up. If you're looking for a different kind of RPG experience, then Knights of Pen and Paper is a good pickup. Specifically, Knights of Pen and Paper 2, I think it's a way better game than the first one. Basically, you create a party of like D&D players, D&D characters, and you have your little players at the table, and you're going through doing adventures and doing turn-based combat and, adventuring through, like, imagine old school JRPG type of style combat, like Final Fantasy VII, the original, where you're going through and you're casting your abilities as you might expect. And there's different classes and stuff as you would expect with a D&D like experience. It is really kind of unique and cool, and for $1.80, it is absolutely worth playing. I think Pen and Paper 2 is better than the first one, but overall, both games are absolutely worth it. You're not going to miss out by going from just buying number 2 and not having number 1. So that's why I suggest 2 over 1, because I think it is a better experience. And if you're really into that kind of RPG experience, like D&D like stuff, and maybe you do really like the turn-based combat, then I would highly recommend the Shadowrun series. So you have Shadowrun Returns, Shadowrun Hong Kong, and Shadowrun Dragonfall. Those are 3 separate experiences. The story doesn't really cross over at all, so you could play them individually and have a great time. I think, for me personally, I think Hong Kong is my favorite, but a lot of people seem to enjoy Dragonfall. Shadowrun Returns was the first version that they came out with. It got kickstarted and everything, and is great. Like, don't get me wrong, Returns is fantastic, but it's definitely the weakest of the 3 games. It's also pretty cheap to pick up too, so count your chickens on that one. I think, honestly, if you're only going to pick up one of them, maybe pick up Dragonfall. And if you're into the kind of Chinese theme, then go with Hong Kong. But otherwise, yeah, Dragonfall is probably the best for if you're just going to pick up one of them. But like I said, I think Hong Kong is my favorite. Fantastic games. I would definitely recommend if you're into the kind of slower turn-based combat, reading a lot of text, leveling your character up, and especially if you're interested in any kind of cyberpunk stuff. Shadowrun does a mix of fantasy and cyberpunk, so it's a unique experience, but it is really, really cool. Shadowrun. And here's another cyberpunk-esque game for you. Black the Fall is a really awesome looking cyberpunk game that plays a lot like things like Limbo or Little Nightmares. It's kind of an interesting little puzzle experience where you go through the levels and you get to explore this world, but it's fantastic, especially for its price. Would highly recommend Black the Fall. And finally, to wrap this all up, I recommend Bomber Crew at this price, definitely at this price. If you like management games like FTL, where you have a ship and you're kind of dealing with the people on the ship, well, in this case, it is a bomber, and you're dealing with the people on the bomber, and you're kind of moving your crew around, and you're repairing systems as they get damaged and whatnot. It's really cool. It's a unique little game, and I recommend this one for anybody who's interested in those kind of like FTL like games where you're doing micromanaging of a ship. In this case, it just happens to be a bomber, and I think that is a cool little unique theme that you don't really see anywhere else. And there you have it. Those are my massive amount of suggestions for games for the Black Friday sale. You do not have long to pick up these games, so be sure to head on over immediately and go and look at this stuff. And then just, browse on your own as well. But be sure to use the link, like I said, in the description and in my comments, because that does support the channel, and it literally doesn't take you anything other than clicking on the link. It'll just take you to Green Man Gaming, and then you can browse from there, and I get a portion of the sale, which is great. It supports the channel. Like I said, requires nothing from you. Thank you guys for watching, and we shall see you guys next time. It's a unique little game, and I recommend this one for anybody who's interested in those kind of like FTL-like games where you're doing micromanaging of a ship. In this case, it just happens to be a bomber, and I think that is a cool little unique theme that you don't really see anywhere else. And there you have it. Those are my massive amount of suggestions for games for the Black Friday sale. You do not have long to pick up these games, so be sure to head on over immediately and go and look at this stuff. And then just, browse on your own as well. But be sure to use the link, like I said, in the description and in my comments, because that does support the channel, and it literally doesn't take you anything other than clicking on the link. It'll just take you to Green Man Gaming, and then you can browse from there, and I get a portion of the sale, which is great. It supports the channel. Like I said, requires nothing from you. Thank you guys for watching, and we shall see you guys next time.